Now for Global Business Updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers worldwide. We begin with Jerome Powell, and we're not actually going to be talking about interest rates. We're actually going to be talking about the labor market. It was a very great conversation you're just having on student loans and the need to educate our workforce. Listen to how Jerome Powell describes the strength of the U.S. labor market, preventing a recession that analysts had predicted for America in 2023. Here he is.
I need to start by saying that the Fed is not an immigration policymaker, and don't comment on those who do have that assignment or the policies that they make. It's really we're just calling the balls and strikes on the economy as we see them. And so from that standpoint, our economy's been short labor and probably still is. If you talk to, and we do talk to a lot of business people, it's still difficult to hire for many, many companies. So we've needed more people. But what happened over the course of last year is, to a much greater extent than had been thought, immigration moved up quite a bit over the last 2 years. And this is typically the Census Bureau does all this estimating. The Congressional Budget Office actually went and took a different path and talked to the people who work at the border and that kind of thing, and got a much higher estimate, which now many groups have gone out to validate. And I would say it's clear there's something there. The numbers are actually higher. And that actually explains what we've been asking ourselves, which is how can the economy have grown over 3% in a year where almost every outside economist was forecasting a recession? An overwhelming majority anyway were forecasting a recession for 2023. Not only did that not happen, we had better than 3% growth. So really a remarkable performance, and some part of that is that there are significantly more people working in the country, but then how does inflation come down? It's because the capacity of the economy has actually moved up perhaps more than the actual output. So it's a bigger economy, but not a tighter one. Really an unexpected and unusual thing. Again, we don't make judgment calls, but that's what we're seeing.
All right, we move to India, again making how many headlines is India going to make? Narendra Modi in June, July of 2023 went to the United States. He met with Elon Musk. He went to Tesla's gigafactory, I think it was either California or Texas, and there were discussions that were to be had. The Financial Times is reporting that, according to sources, Tesla has sent out some scouts to go and look for locations to start building a manufacturing plant for the electric vehicles in India. It is estimated to be anywhere from a $2 to $3 billion plant. Now, one of the conditions they wanted was for imports of vehicles, tariffs to be lowered before they agreed. Apparently, India has acquiesced, and so Tesla now is apparently going to be sending out a team of scouts later on this month, and they're going to be looking for, I think Gujarat is one of the areas they're looking at, where they are close to ports, kind of like where the Dangote refinery is located, where close to the ports where you can, or rather the sea, so you can get exports out there. So once again, you've got India attracting another massive investment. Does anyone remember my solid mineral wish list from 8 months ago, where I was, again, was a wish list talking about how Dele Alake, our Minister of Mines and Steel, could try and attract a Tesla or a Rio Tinto. Nothing since then. We haven't even heard from Dele Alake in quite a while, so I'm not really sure what the updates are as far as mining is concerned. Anyway, still on Tesla, their vehicle deliveries underperformed. Less than 400,000. If you compare what they did in the first quarter of this year versus quarter 4 of 2023 versus estimates about 450,000, I think they did about 380,000. A year ago this quarter, rather we're in quarter 2 now, but a year ago quarter 1, they did about 412 or 423 or so. So Tesla stock has been beaten up pretty bad. It's down about 33 to 35% so far this year. As we all know, they've been facing facing a lot of competition from BYD and other Chinese brands. But something has to be said for Elon Musk's own behavior, which tells you that it's not only about being a genius that can push your products forward. If you are a polarizing character, you can actually turn people off your product. So there's a headline that was written, I think it was in a blog, saying that Elon Musk is, apparently turning off would-be Tesla investors. And there's some tweets. Ross Gerber is a big Tesla investor. He lives in California. And a tweet from him says, basically, Tesla can't sell its cars due to Elon's behavior. Let's stop blaming the Houthi rebels or German environmental terrorists or a recession that never came. Remember that Jerome Powell discussion just a few minutes ago on the recession that never came. Or interest rates. Only one person is responsible for this. We've also got another tweet from a gentleman called Hale Chu who says, I don't know why the community, that's the Tesla community, some call them a cult, can't see the effects of political polarization of the company on sales. It's really just bizarre. And then we've got a quote from Ed Kim. He's the president and chief analyst at Auto Pacific. They're a research firm that just focuses on the automobile industry. He says, a modest but growing number of electric vehicle shoppers are increasingly put off by Elon Musk's behavior and politics and are now finding viable alternatives to Tesla in the marketplace. So Musk, which he famously comments on everything, he has not said a single word about Tesla in the last few days since those delivery numbers came out. But the challenges are there. But something has to be said about the right-wing stuff that he posts online and the people he associates with. Because if you think about the kind of people that buy electric cars, they're mostly liberals and environmentalists and left-leaning people. So he's actually hitting on his own constituency. Anyway, we get to Disney. This was one of the biggest boardroom battles that the markets had been looking at over in the media space. On your left-hand side, you've got Bob Iger, who is the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. On your right, you've got the billionaire activist investor Nelson Peltz. Nelson Peltz is, if you look at his profile, he is an 81-year-old. He's an octogenarian. He has a net worth of about $1.7 to $1.9 billion. He's the co-founder of the Trion Fund Management Group. It's a hedge fund. AUM is assets under management. They've got about $10 billion in assets under management. They hold over $3.5 billion worth of Disney stock. They are the fifth largest investor in Disney. And he was trying to get board seats. He had been trying to push to, try and get his influence on the company. Millions of dollars were spent on this annual general meeting that was coming up in terms of trying to get shareholders to pick which side they would go with. They ended up going with Bob Iger. So Peltz has essentially been defeated, although if you look at where Disney stock is now, it's up about 30% year to date. And Iger now has the room to go forward and try to improve the Marvel movies they've been releasing. I hear they want to expand their theme parks, which is I think amounts to about 70% of Disney's revenues. So, Iger wins that thing and he moves on now, hopefully without any more distractions in terms of boardroom battles or boardroom politics. We come to Nigeria. You talked a lot about the student loan. We had Mr. Akintunde Sawyer on the Global Business Report about 3 weeks ago discussing the student loan. And you've already touched on this, but, coming from the executive secretary of the NEL Fund, here he is talking about, I think it was on March 12th or so, how you have more time to pay if you aren't able to pay back those student loans.
So the moratorium. So in terms of when applicants or obligors are absolutely required to start reporting on their financial status, it's 2 years post NYSC. So 2 years post NYSC, there is a requirement to make payments back to the fund if I reiterate, the obligor has a job or has earnings. If for any reason they don't have a job yet, post 2 years after NYSC, or they don't have any earnings otherwise, it basically means that they can't pay. Now, if someone can't pay, you can't compel them to pay, and this is not the spirit of what we're trying to do here. the spirit of this is that if people can pay, they should pay. The other thing I should say is that those who wish to pay early can. So even though the moratorium takes them 2 years post NYSE, if people want to pay early because they've got a job or a windfall of some sort, they can.
So, I was listening to you three discuss this. I share Ayo's concerns. The concern with, it's great that the loan is being rolled out, it's being revised, but this matter of forgiving loans, or if you can't pay, you're going to look at what the number of non-performing loans could be. Look at what's happening in America with student loan forgiveness, and, Biden being challenged by the U.S. Congress on whether or not he can forgive student loans. It's in the billions now. The student loan debt in America keeps climbing. That debt either has to be repaid or forgiven, and that is a cost to the government. Finally, we round off with the finance minister, Wale Edun. Apparently in Lagos yesterday, he was quoted by the Reuters saying that they are looking at this second quarter to issue US dollar denominated bonds to the domestic market. Now, of course, Arise News was in Davos at the business roundtable. Dr. Abate was there, myself, Rolaka Akinkube, where Vice President Kashim Shettima led that delegation. He had a number of ministers with him. Wale Edun was there, Dr. Bosun Tijani, ICT minister, was there. And Wale Edun again talked about how the president had signed an executive order to issue these dollar bonds to Nigerians to try to entice folks that have funds in their domiciliary accounts and also diaspora. Good idea on the one hand, but then there's always two sides to this, like student loans. You are incentivizing Nigerians to hold dollars to get paid back in USD, and then there's the interest rates cost side of it. So, we'll see how things work out. Naira has been appreciating, and so on and so forth. That's our update.
All right. Rotus, like you read our mind in the studio here. That's what we were just saying off the air before you came in. We're dealing with a lot of non-performing loans as we speak in the economy, which is beginning to bubble up. Then we want to add student loan to it, which is free money, and you add it to the loan profile of society, and there is no real productive value in society. And when you look at it, I think an argument was made as regards education. It's not that Nigerians are not getting education. Nigerians are one of the most educated people you can ever meet. An average Nigerian you have has a university degree. Your security man that works in the bar down the road has probably got a university degree or is doing part-time somewhere. So when you look at it, it's not getting into the university system we should look at. It is using that money that you're now shelling out in loans that you cannot recover to invest in the university system, as it were, to be able to make them top of the line. And that's what we should do. So when Awolowo gave free education in the Western region, he didn't just give free, he gave quality education. Those that passed through Awolowo's free education are better than most university graduates today. The quality was good. So I think that's what we should be investing. And we've seen the Americans. The student loan scheme in America didn't tick the needle as regards productivity. Rotus, what changed the dynamics of American education system was the GI Bill, where most of the veterans could go to school through the grants. It was the GI Bill that really accelerated education, not the loan system. But the government has passed it. Dr. Bati, you said rightly, this is of the pudding is in the eating. Let's see how this is implemented. But I just hope it's not another man-no-man shenanigan and all of that. But we're just going to ramp up the level of loans in society. And this is money we do not have, money we can use for productive things. Secondly, as regards the squabble, I'm probably sure Elon Musk saw the squabble coming up in Disney. That's why he made that statement, that tweet on April Fool's Day, that he might be joining Disney as, the chief of DEI and all of that. So he saw this coming. That's what happens when you have a big company like that. But most importantly, Elon Musk with his activities would definitely hurt his business, especially since when he came on Twitter and the kind of things he pushes out, which is going to have a side effect on his business.
Yeah, when you opined, Rotus, about Elon Musk's antics and the effect on his business, now you centered on Tesla and valuation. And I thought, okay, let me check his other businesses to see if there's actually some merit to that, because he runs a chain of businesses, one of which is X. And truthfully, like you mentioned, based on third-party information gotten about the revenue, especially ad revenues from Twitter, from X now, you would see that it's falling 55% year on year. So there is actually a big case around that. And also recall that last year, Comcast, Disney pulled their ad breaks because he liked a statement around Jews demarketing white people in the United States of America. So you're absolutely right in terms of his antics might very well be costing his business some money. The reason I say that is because when you look at the Tesla story, beyond his antics, of course, we have more competition in the EV space. The Chinese market is booming, especially with support from the government, and we've talked about that a number of times. So that would definitely have an impact on Tesla sales. But it also hurts the business further when the person at the helms of affairs does not inspire confidence or puts people off from further investing or even buying his product. So a lot on his hands. Let's see if this can tame him a little and make him go on the straight and narrow. If his business opportunities or loss in business would help him in that regard. We keep watching.
Okay, first, I see that the subject of Tinubu's students' loan scheme has come up again. What Tinubu was talking about yesterday is quality education. He was talking about access to quality education. There's a difference between quantitative education and qualitative education, to the extent that the president is placing emphasis on quality education. I think that's important. Another statement that he made, and which this new act addresses, is about using education as a tool of empowerment. I don't think we can argue against that in a world that has become more competitive. Number 3 is that new act talks about equity in terms of access. So this is not something that is going to be done in terms of political affiliation. However, as I said earlier, when on this program this morning we discussed this subject, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. Awolowo was praised along the ideological grounds because he implemented it so well that the Southeast also ran with it, the North also tried to do it. Education, education, education. We can never argue against it. The abuse of the opportunities offered will be the problem. And if we see the abuse, we will deal with it. Now, what is the next subject I want to talk about? You talked about the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. Well, what Jerome Powell has said is still consistent. That's the same position that the U.S. Federal Reserve has maintained, that they need more data. Inflation figures are hot. In January, the figure was 3.2%. In February, it was 3.2%. But we have seen great performance in the labor sector and also in terms of other, inflation gauges of the U.S. But the U.S. Federal Reserve has adopted a cautionary approach. The same approach that you quoted yesterday, which I pointed out when you were quoting Mary Daly, the president of the Reserve in San Francisco. That same position is maintained by the president of the Reserve in Atlanta and also the president of the Reserve in Cleveland. So you find the unanimity of purpose, within the Monetary Policy Committee of the United States. Caution. The whole range of inflation now is between 2.5% and 3.4%. And what Jerome Powell is saying basically is that we are still a little far away from that 2%. Rate cuts, are we going to have 3, as Mary Daly was saying, or are we going to have 1, as the Atlanta president is saying? But what I find more instructive in what J. Powell said yesterday was his insistence on the independence of the Central Bank of America. He said, we are not into politics. We are independent. We are just focusing on monetary policy. Because there are some people, all these climate change people, who are saying the Central Bank of the US should get involved in it. He said, no, that's not our business. Our business is monetary policy. We are not into politics. We are not into climate change. were just focused. And I think that that is what is important, that central banks do not act as the political wing of political parties or dance to the whims and caprices of political leaders. Finally, Disney. This is Players or Triumph Foundation versus Bob Iger. But at the end of the day, you know, Bob Iger won. He had the support of the shareholders when they had their meeting yesterday. Players, what's his name, got 31% of the votes. The board got the remaining votes, which is the majority. And what Pearls and others who are called activist investors were saying is that the business is not doing well, and that, you know, the television and streaming business, you know, has to be reviewed, and they were promising more profits. But the board, typical boardroom battle, but this was a very tough battle, very costly battle. The Pearls Group, the activist investors, they spent over $24 million on adverts trying to persuade shareholders. The company itself spent over $40 million trying to persuade shareholders the other way. So typical boardroom war, but it won. But however, the issue that has been highlighted is a struggle at the heart of that business, you know, and that has been exposed because of this very dirty, ferocious boardroom battle. So going forward, you know, Walt Disney will also have to take a second look at its operations and learn the appropriate lessons from what has happened, particularly now that Pearls and the other activist investors are saying, yeah, well, they may have lost out, but at least they made their point. Those are the issues on that subject. Well, thank you very much, Rotus.